Good day, children. I hope you're all fine. Children, you're young adolescents. There is so much going on in your lives. There are so many changes taking place in you. They're mental, physical, psychological changes, social changes going on inside you, around you. And there are things that you want to share, things that you want to talk about. So, whom do you share those thoughts and feelings with? Do you share them with your friends? Yes? Other children your age? Yes? Or do you share them with your parents? Some things you can share with your friends, and yes, some you can share with your parents. But then there are things you feel a little uncomfortable talking to your parents about. You would rather talk to somebody your own age. And yet there are things that you feel that you cannot even share with your friends. You feel awkward talking about those things. You feel they're all your personal secrets, your personal stuff. Do you share your thoughts and feelings with your grandparents? Yes, if you're close to your grandparents, I'm sure you'd be sharing some of the stuff with them. But then again, like with parents and like with friends, there are still some personal thoughts and feelings. So, with whom would you share those? Well, perhaps just with yourself or with your diary. Now, what's a diary? Diary is a book with a separate space or a page for each day in which you can write your thoughts and feelings. You can write whatever happened that day. So yes, you can share your innermost thoughts and feelings with your diary. Today, children, we will study the chapter from the Diary of Anne Frank from your book First Flight for class 10. This lesson is an extract from the book The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. In this, we read about Anne Frank's thoughts and feelings as she chronicles them in her diary. For her, her diary was her best friend. She shared her innermost thoughts and feelings in the diary. And children, when you read this, you will see how well you can relate to this lesson, how well you can relate to the thoughts and feelings of Anne. And here she's kept it very light-hearted, and you'll be amazed at the maturity shown by this young girl who is only 13 years old. Now, this diary was gifted to her on her 13th birthday, which was on 12th June by her father. So, she got this diary on 12th June 1942, and she started writing in it on 20th June 1942. And she wrote on for the next few years, and this diary is a masterpiece. It chronicles the time and events during that period from a child's point of view, from a 13-year-old young girl's point of view. We can see how she lost the innocence of her childhood during those troubled times of the Holocaust, because she was a German-born Jew, and the Jews suffered at the hands of the Nazis. But the lesson which is in your syllabus is a very nice, light-hearted extract from that diary. Let's read on. Anneliese Mary Frank, or Anne Frank, was born on 12th June 1929. She was a German-born Jewish girl who wrote while in hiding with her family and 4 friends in Amsterdam during the German occupation of the Netherlands in World War II. Her family had moved to Amsterdam after the Nazis gained power in Germany, but were trapped when the Nazi occupation extended into the Netherlands. As persecutions against the Jewish population increased, the family went into hiding in July 1942. in hidden rooms in her father Otto Frank's office building. After 2 years in hiding, the group was betrayed and transported to the concentration camp system, where Anne died of typhus in Bergen-Belsen within days of her sister Margot Frank. After the war ended, her father Otto Frank, the only survivor of the group, returned to Amsterdam to find that her diary had been saved. Convinced that it was a unique record, he took action to have it published in English under the name The Diary of a Young Girl. The lesson in our syllabus, the one we are going to read, was written before they went into hiding. The excerpt from the Diary of Anne Frank, which is in the First Flight book of class 10, was written before they went into hiding. This was written around 20th of June 1942. They went into hiding on July 6, 1942. But even at that time, the Jews were being persecuted by the Germans, by the Nazis, all over the world. Wherever the Nazis found Jews, they tortured them, ill-treated them, and also killed them. The Jews were terribly discriminated against by the Nazis, just the way the blacks in South Africa were discriminated against by the whites, as we have read in the lesson, Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. Here, the Jews were not allowed to use the same transport as the Nazis. They were not allowed to go to the same places or restaurants. They were not allowed to go to school. They had to leave their studies midway because they were being persecuted by the Nazis. But the lesson that we are about to read does not cover those things. This is a very light-hearted lesson. Let's read on. So Anne Frank writes, "Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me." Anne's autobiography was published in 1947 for the first time. In this lesson, Anne expresses her thoughts about her childhood, her family, and a lot of other things that she told no one else. She named her diary Kitty. Now let's start reading the lesson. Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on, neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. Children, why does Anne find it a strange experience to write in a diary? Because it was the first time she was doing it. And she thinks that later on nobody would be interested to know what she has written. After all, she is just a 13-year-old schoolgirl. She thinks that later even she would not be interested in reading it. But children, do you think she was right? No. This work of hers has been read by millions of people around the world. Children, what do you understand by the phrase, getting all kinds of things off my chest? Well, this means that something which causes emotional discomfort because it has been repressed, it has been kept hidden and not discussed earlier. So how does one get it off the chest? By sharing it, by sharing those thoughts and feelings. And with whom does Anne share these feelings? How does she get them off her chest? By writing them in a diary. So children, why does she decide to write a diary? She felt that she should write because she feels like doing so, and that there were lots of thoughts that she had been holding on to lately and she needed to get them off her mind. And she also decides to write because she feels that writing one's thoughts act as a therapy. So writing thoughts in a diary feels the same as sharing them with a friend, and she perhaps does not have a close friend. Anne writes, "Paper has more patience than people." I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stayed where I was, brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience, and since I'm not planning to let anyone else read this stiff-backed notebook, grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of difference. Now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Children, what do you understand by the metaphoric statement, paper has more patience than people? Paper, a non-living thing, has been called patient, as if it were a person. So this is personification as well as the use of a metaphor here. As far as the statement goes, people have low patience levels, but a piece of paper, being a non-living thing, would silently record her thoughts. It would patiently let her fill its blank pages with her thoughts, feelings, ideas, and observations. The diary would not cut short her conversations the way some people would. It would not distract, disturb, or ignore her. Here she could comfortably share and write her feelings. Children, what was her mood when she thought of the saying, paper has more patience than people? At that time, she was very sad and confused because she did not know whether she should stay at home or she could go out, because like we've already discussed, the circumstances where the Jews were being discriminated against and ill-treated. She sat feeling depressed and she was in deep thought. She was feeling lonely, she had no friends to talk to. Children, when she wrote her diary, did she intend to share it with someone? Did she intend to let someone read it? No, she did not. She was writing it only for herself. But she said unless she found a real friend. Yes, she would let her real friend read it. Anne writes on, let me put it more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. And I'm not. I have loving parents and a 16-year-old sister. And there are about 30 people I can call friends. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface, I seem to have everything except my one true friend. All I think about when I'm with friends is having a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary, everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer. And that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just how things are. And unfortunately, they are not liable to change. This is why I have started the diary. Children, is she alone in the world? No. She has parents, loving parents, a 16-year-old sister, about 30 people she can call friends, she has aunts, she has a family. So she is not alone. But what is she missing out on? She is missing out on having a true friend. So children, does she have friends? Oh yes, she does have friends. And what does she do with those friends? She plays with them, she interacts with them, she has a good time with them, she does enjoy with them. But what is it that she can't do with those friends? She cannot share her inner feelings. She cannot talk about her personal feelings. Yes, they talk a lot, they talk about ordinary everyday things. But her innermost thoughts, her personal thoughts, she is not able to share with them. So she says maybe it is her own fault that she can't confide in others. Maybe she cannot develop that kind of a closeness with those people. That is why she decides to write in a diary. So children, do you have real friends? Have you been lucky enough to find a real friend? Yes? Good. But if not, then I suggest that you do not suppress your thoughts and feelings. You must share your feelings with somebody who is close to you. be it your siblings, your brothers and sisters, be it your parents or grandparents. But please do not suppress your thoughts. Anne writes on, to enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do. But I want the diary to be my friend. And I'm going to call this friend Kitty. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty if I were to plunge right in, I'd better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. So what does Anne name her diary? Kitty. And why does she name it? Because she considers her diary to be her friend. So she has a name for it. So children, when writing in a diary, most people just list down all the facts about them in a formal manner sometimes even in an informal manner. But this author, our Anne, does not want to do that. This is because she wanted to give her need for a friend a shape, and she gives it a name. She wants to share all her feelings with this diary. Why does Anne provide a brief sketch of her life? Because she is hoping that someday if someone were to read the diary, she thinks that the writing without giving the details about the background story would be ineffective. So, even though she does not want to share her life story as such, she still gives a brief detail about her life, only so that the person reading it would understand her thoughts, her feelings. So, they knew what her life was like. Children, let's do an activity now. I'll give you some statements and you have to tell me whether they are true or false. Anne was 16 years old.
That's a false statement, ma'am. Anne was 13 years old.
Absolutely right. She wrote a diary to get things off her chest.
Very correct, ma'am.
Good. She did not have a close friend.
Very right, she did not have one.
She had many friends, but none of them was close to her.
Yes, ma'am.
Anne's sister was younger than her.
No, ma'am. Anne's sister was elder to her.
Really? How old was Anne?
She was 13, ma'am.
And her sister?
She was 16, I guess. Yes, she was 16.
That's amazing. You've been listening very attentively. Anne had a very loving family.
True, ma'am.
Anne blamed herself for not confiding in friends.
Again true.
Good, good. Anne named her diary Catty.
No, ma'am. Anne named her diary Kitty.
That's wonderful. She named the diary because she wanted it to be her friend.
Right, ma'am. Correct.
You are so good. Brilliant child.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let's read what she says about her family. My father, the most adorable father I have ever seen, didn't marry my mother until he was 36 and she was 25. So children, her parents are 11 years apart. My sister Margot was born in Frankfurt in Germany in 1926. I was born on 12th June 1929, which is about 3 years after her sister. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. My father emigrated to Holland in 1933. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went with him to Holland in September, while Margot and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. This is so that the parents would be able to settle down first in Holland. The children stayed back with their grandmother. Margot went to Holland in December and I followed in February, when I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot. Now, this statement is so humorous. When she says, I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot, as if you put your birthday presents and your gifts on the table. She was kept like that for her sister. I started right away at the Montessori nursery school. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started in the first form. In the 6th form, my teacher was Mrs. Cupris, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell. Children, Anne felt very sad when she had to leave her headmistress and when she had to leave her school in the 6th form. Are you close to your teachers? How will you feel when you pass out of school? Will you miss your teachers? In the summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill and had to have an operation. So my birthday passed with little celebration. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and I still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The four of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present date of 20th June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. Children, she was very fond of her grandmother. How can we make out that she loved her grandmother so much? See, firstly, she did not celebrate her birthday when her grandmother fell ill, and later on for her next birthday, although her grandmother was no more, her grandmother had died. Yet in her memory, Anne lit a candle with the rest of her candles on her birthday cake. Now that is so sweet. Children, are you close to your grandparents? Grandparents are very, very special people. Children, you must spend quality time with them. Anne misses her grandmother more than anyone knows. She doesn't share this feeling with everyone, but in her diary, she does write that she misses her grandmother more than anyone knows. Children, let's have a quiz now. Anne was gifted the diary by her friend, sister, father, mother.
Well, Anne was gifted the diary by her father.
Very good. This was gifted to her on her 13th birthday. Writing the diary was a strange experience for Anne because the options are: she did not like to write, she had never written anything before, she did not know how to write, everyone wanted to know what she was writing.
This is option number B. She had never written anything before.
That is correct. The next question is, Anne wanted to maintain a diary as she thought it was fashionable, she had no close friends, she loved to write, all her friends wrote in their diaries.
I believe Anne wanted to maintain a diary as she had no close friends.
Very well done. Good. Anne gave a brief sketch about her family in the diary. The options are: so that whoever read her diary should be able to understand her stories, so that she would remember everything about her family, because she loved her family, because she enjoyed writing.
I feel that Anne gave a brief sketch about her family in the diary because whosoever read her diary should be able to understand her stories. This is option A.
Excellent. Very, very well done. Anne's father emigrated to which country now? The options are England, Switzerland, New Zealand, Holland.
Anne's father immigrated to Holland.
That's correct. Anne was born in England, Holland, Germany or France.
Anne was born in Germany.
Good. Anne went to live with her grandmother in, the options are Aachen, Paris, Berlin, London.
Anne went to live with her grandmother in Aachen.
Excellent. That's brilliant, child. Children, we've come to the end of the first session of our lesson from the diary of Anne Frank. In this, Anne was gifted a diary on her 13th birthday by her father. She did not have any real friend, a very close friend. She led a lonely life. So she treated her diary like a close friend. She named it Kitty, and she shared her innermost thoughts and feelings in the diary. We will learn about the rest of it in our next session.